Welcome back to another edition of Hoss Talks, and ladies and gentlemen, in studio, the faster of the Stewart brothers, Darren Stewart, joining me. Darren, thanks for taking time out of the schedule to come by, man.
Hey, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Love what you do, and just an honor to be able to be a part of it.
Golly, man. All right, that's the show. Thanks for watching Hoss Talks,
okay,
man. I feel great. Man, we're done here. Darren, let's everybody knows the Stewart name, all right? They know Car and Fleet. They know Mom and Dad over there doing their thing. They know that guy Shane did the outlaw deal and whatever. You were a pretty solid driver yourself. I mean, let's rewind. I kind of gave hint of something that I was going to bring up, but if race fans don't have the My Race Pass app, you should get it today. Like, it's way cool, right? And there's a plethora of information if you just want to go dig for it. And I went digging a little bit last night while I was enjoying a couple of cocktails and found out that 1999 was the first documented race for you on My Race Pass. It was at Caney Valley Speedway, and you finished third, and you're like, oh, hey, whoa, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to where you started. Did you start before or after Shane, and was it Shane's fault that you did what you did?
Yeah, so I started after Shane. So Shane, we kind of got our start in quarter midgets. Like, back in the day, that seems to be what most kids did. So we started in quarter midgets. I started when I was about 5 years old. Shane's about 5 or 6 years older than me, so naturally, he started before me. So I spent most of my days as a young kid, chasing, playing at the racetrack, as my brother was getting started. So I got my chance when I was 5 years old and ran quarter midgets for a couple years until I was about 7. And then 7's kind of when I hopped into the 125s, which will be the equivalent of, I would say, probably the junior sprint class now. So I did that up until I felt like I was in that class forever. So I started when I was 7. I think I raced that until I was 12 or 13 years old. So a lot of laps at this place at Port City when it used to be called Rujo. And then ran a year in the sportsman or the A class back then, and then went straight into racing Tulsa Speedway and the 2 barrels, and that's kind of how I got kicked off with doing some of that. So
whenever you were here, running around chasing big brothers out racing, were you begging Dad like, Dad, I'm ready to race. Dad, I'm ready to race, or was it like, and Mike, hold on, son, your time will come.
Yeah.
Hold on, you little young one.
I don't recall begging to race.
Yeah.
I felt like it was just something that if I was going to be there, I might as well be racing. So I kind of felt like that's how I kind of got started. I don't recall. My dad and mom could probably tell you something different, but I don't recall like just eager begging to race. My boys begged to race.
Yeah.
And I kept telling them no for a few years. But I don't recall begging. I just recall just something naturally that was what our family did. So yeah. So I kind of got into it, and my dad will still tell you to this day, I think I raced for an entire year in 125s and never passed a single car. So he's like, you would catch them, and then you just follow them for the rest of the race. So I'm sure that was frustrating.
Yeah.
And but it's cool to see how kids kind of get started. But I don't recall just begging and wanting eager to go. So
once you get rolling, you race a couple years here and there, and then you get into running the Tulsa Speedway. Yep. Do you recall your first race in the big car? What was that like? I mean, are the nerves like?
Oh yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, luckily, similar to here, you got at least a couple days to play, and practice. But practicing and racing, two different things. I mean, I could go out there and make 100 laps, and I feel like you get out and you're thinking, man, I felt pretty good, and then you actually get in a race situation, and you're the slowest guy on the racetrack. So, yeah, I mean, I vaguely recall, just the speed and the power, even of 2 barrels at the time. It's overwhelming for a 13-year-old kid. So I'm sure it was a huge learning experience. I'm sure I was a nervous wreck. But kind of like any racer, you get in, you put your helmet on, and the nerves kind of go away once you get out there and start rolling. You're just like, okay, now it's time to do this.
Focused on the job at hand.
Yeah. So I know, I remember the first year probably was a struggle. If I could run in the top 5, that was a win.
Right.
But naturally, as you make laps and start putting things together, you can, we were able to win some races as a kid in sprint cars at Tulsa Speedway. So fortunate enough, and I mean, I think Tulsa Speedway probably groomed some of the better racers in the country.
Absolutely.
So we're fortunate enough to have places like Port City and Tulsa Speedway and those to in your backyard.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that have to travel quite a bit of ways, and so I was just fortunate enough to live in a town that had some of the bigger races.
Let's talk about the sibling rivalry. Yeah. Like, what was there like any like I'm better than you? No, I'm going to tackle you down. No, like.
No,
what I got to do is I got to bring Mike and Judy and have a show with them because they can tell the stories about the bickering. Like,
yeah. So I mean, probably like any brothers, we probably fought all the time. Naturally, I was the younger one, so I probably got picked on. But now I'm the bigger one, so I mean, he has to kind of watch himself now.
So hey, they played in a golf tournament yesterday, right? And they send a group picture of all of them, and Shane's holding this driver, and the driver is almost as tall as him. And I'm like, I showed somebody, and they're like, man, you figured he'd get some golf clubs that would fit him.
Yeah. So there's definitely no tall genes in the Stewart family. Unfortunately. So, but hey, there's an argument that might make you a better race car driver. So, Shane's great. We never really raced a whole lot until probably later in my career, just because
you were driving the Sparks car, right?
Yeah. So
at that point,
so I was doing two barrels at Tulsa and running some of what probably is now the OCRS series. And Shane was kind of starting to get into racing for Holbrook. With the 410s and driving, I guess our family car at the time. So we never really, we were always kind of in different classes.
Right.
And that was just probably just due to age.
Yeah.
And timing. So then as he went on to kind of start getting his feet wet in the World of Outlaw deal and the Gum Out series that used to happen, I slowly started getting into some 410 races. Mostly NCRA, local stuff. But I think that was a huge advantage. I mean, I was able to race with Donnie Crawford and Mike Peters and, and some of those.
You were running like 30 and 40 races a year.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In that time.
And then the NCRA series was great because you could race Wichita, and we ran Oklahoma City and stuff. So there was another 10 or 12 races that you could easily go hit just living right here. And it made it, it was seat time. It was racing new competition. And it made it to where, you just got experience. And that was the biggest thing back then was, the money, I think back then wasn't as critical as it is now.
Right.
I mean, the horsepower of a 410 back then is probably equivalent to an ASCS now.
Right.
In all reality. So, so I never really had a lot of chances to race with Shane until, like you said, I got into the Sparks car running the ASCS. And then as kind of Shane was, still trying to make ends meet as far as being a racer. He found himself in Silva's race car with running the ASCS, and then before that he was racing for Scott Chilcutt in the 4 a.m. car. And so at that point we started crossing each other a little bit more because he would run kind of a mixed schedule of 410s and 360s. So anytime he would come around the 360, we had the chance to race with each other. And in my mind, it was, as you see some of those guys like him and Jason Johnson, those guys, when you're showing up every night, it's a lot of, hey, if I can outrun Shane, I'm going to have a chance to win this because he's going to be there.
Right.
I mean, it's just that he was naturally that talented. And so there was a lot of, I guess, rivalry as, hey, I'm going to beat him, but if I can beat him, I should be able to beat everyone.
Beat the whole field.
Yeah. So, and I still remember races where, as brothers and a kid, it was always cool to think of, hey, if we could run 1-2, that's cool. That's a sweet night.
Yeah.
And I still remember Speed Week. This was probably 2002, 2003. I was racing for Sparks. He was in the 4 a.m. And I think we ran 1-2 like 2 or 3 nights in 1 week. And I mean, that was, if I couldn't win, why wouldn't I want my brother to win?
Right.
So that was a joy to be able to race with him. One of the nights I was actually able to race him, pass him, and go on to win. And I mean, and just for that feeling alone is cool. So
was there a time, even now, is there a time where you would try and go to him for a little bit of advice, like whenever you're moving through, did he ever like lead you astray? Did he ever give you was it always solid advice?
Oh yeah, it was always solid advice. It was I still remember, and I still remember we went through this stretch where I think as a driver I sucked. Like, I was spinning out on the ASTS. I was crashing, and I was running 10th or 12th every night. And there was this little month window, and I still remember receiving phone calls from my brother going like, dude, what is going on?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, man, I don't know. I was just in a funk. Like,
right.
We just couldn't. We were also trying with some cars, and, and I kept I just wasn't comfortable. We tried a new chassis, and it just wasn't working. And it takes a full combination of everything, from
right.
the crew guys to the chassis you're driving to the motor program to the driver. Everyone has to be comfortable, or you're not going to be successful. And for whatever reason, I went through that stretch where I wasn't comfortable. And luckily enough, I didn't get fired. And Bobby Sparks, which is like a second dad to me. I mean, I spent most of my racing career outside of my family with him.
Right.
And luckily he trusted me. And I just said, hey, there's just something about this car. I can't drive it. So naturally, we went back to the shop one time in Olive Branch, Mississippi, where he housed everything, and we built a new car. And instantly, night and day difference. And so it was, just to having that trust from him. He could have easily sent me packing.
Mm-hmm.
When you go on the road, I mean, a month feels like a year, especially when you're struggling. So just having that, I mean, there was always times I would, Shane naturally being with the Outlaws, there's just more experience there.
Right.
You have guys that have done it longer, guys that are extremely successful. So I 100% would call him pretty much after every race, and we would just talk about his race, talk about my race, and just kind of just that guidance and being able to, use him as a crutch to just say, hey, maybe you should try this, or, I tried this and it worked, and, but never was there bad advice, I would say.
Right.
So
he never jinxed you or anything like that.
No, never.
Got it, man.
I know.
If it was me, I'd be jinxing my little brother every chance I got. You go through and you have I would call it a successful career. I mean, you and Shane are tied for the same amount of wins in the Sooner region. You could both have one apiece, along with 28 other guys. I mean, a win on the ASCS tour,
is a win.
And especially back in the heyday, back in the days whenever you guys were running them full time. I mean, getting a win's a win.
Yep.
You went to a lot of tracks.
Yeah.
Like you were Louisiana and Florida, Wichita, State Fair Speedway, Missouri. You were all over the board, right? Did you have like one track in specific, or like a couple of tracks that whenever you went there, you're like, this is my go-to, I'm ready for this?
Yeah. So there was a couple. I mean, I feel like there's definitely racetracks as a driver you struggle at. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, it could be that track's more slick than what someone's used to. Bigger racetracks, I felt like I was a little bit of a more patient driver, not super aggressive. And that's hard to, some racetracks just take an aggressive personality. I felt like, and I would hate to say that I felt like I was fast at Knoxville. Nothing compared to like what Shane has been.
Right.
I mean, just the success he's had there alone, I would say that's his track.
Yeah.
But there's a few places as we were racing the ASCS, like, you would have check marks of like we were really fast there. I felt like there's a racetrack in Fort Smith that I was always fast at, and it was kind of a slick, smooth, big, wide, racy place. But I was always fast there. And then there was a few racetracks out in New Mexico that for whatever reason, it just fit my driving style. And so, there's definitely those. But like I said, back in the day with ASCS, I mean, if you weren't on the Outlaws, the best place you could be was either All-Stars or the ASCS. And fortunate enough, I had someone believe in me as an 18-year-old kid to say, hey, let's go run ASCS. And it's kind of funny how all that kind of came together. But as a kid, that was a win for me. I was still going to college, and it kind of worked out for me. I was able to go to college, get a degree, and yet race. And so it just kind of, the ASCS was that picture for me. I didn't have to travel all over the country, but I got to see 50 different racetracks.
Right.
And so, racing with Jason Johnson and my brother and Gary Wright for all that matters.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the first few years, I think I got my butt kicked every night, but naturally what you don't see is you get better getting your butt kicked.
Yeah.
And when you're in that moment, you don't see it, But as time goes on, and you know, some of these younger drivers that are even on the outlaw deal, I mean, they probably want to go home sometimes.
Absolutely.
But they don't realize they're getting faster every time with the competition, even though they're running 10th or 12th every night.
Right.
And so there was a long stretch, and a lot of it was getting used to Bobby and how he set up cars and how I drove. And so, I mean, I was just coming behind after Tim Crawley left and Mike Ward left. And so luckily enough, with Bobby, I was able to do the national ASCS deal. And then also right in his backyard was Memphis Motorsports Park. And we could race there on Friday, and we could go to Little Rock on Saturday. So I'd say for the first year, we hammered that down.
Right.
And but yeah, so it's I always thought I ran good at Memphis. I always thought but that was the tracks that I was at all the time. But yeah, there's definitely those favorites you go to and ones that you kind of dread. But my goal when I go to those ones I dread was, hey, if we can run the top 5 here, that's a win. Let's get it and figure it out.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, fast forward to 2010.
Okay.
From 2010 to 2021, there's nothing on your stats.
Yep.
Absolutely, there's not one single drop of racing.
Yeah.
Was that by choice, or was that by misfortune? Was that by just a life decision? Like, what brought that up? Because you said you're going to school and racing, so you didn't quit to go to school and get a certificate or a merit badge or anything like that. Were you in Boy Scouts or something for that time period? Like,
No.
Like what happened in that 11 years? Like, where did life take you in 2010? What?
So 2010, I still remember the phone call to this day. You know, like I said, you know, there's that family atmosphere of, you know, you've been with someone so long. Like I said, I started racing for Bobby in probably 2001 and pretty much raced for him until 2010. So there was, you know, you have that emotional connection with someone. And I still remember to this day picking up the phone and having that conversation with him of just saying, you know, like you said, I graduated college in 2005. I was working. Luckily, I was working for an individual that was letting me work Monday through Thursday, leave on Thursday night, and go race. And the ASCS allowed me to do that. But I still remember to this day the phone call, having to call him and say, Bobby, it's not fair to you, and it's not fair to me, but my heart's just not in it. And I think it was, you know, life just happened. I was married at the time. You know, I was living in Oklahoma City. And it was just a lot to take in. I started working at Chesapeake Energy in 2008, and so it was just difficult. I was working all week trying to rush to get to a racetrack, and it just became more of a job than fun. And, you know, I always told myself, if I'm not having fun, it's not worth it. There's too much time and effort and work going into people to not have fun. And so from 2010 on, I raced the guy's car a couple times for a year. When Oklahoma City still had their racetrack, I drove for Butch Roberts, and that was great. I could race on Friday night, go home, sleep in my own bed, and it was just like a Friday night activity. Yeah. And it was in my backyard. So when that went away, I was just like, okay, I'm done. The boys were born in 2012, so life just happened. And it kind of made me you know, I lived my life for the next 10 years as a fan through my brother. Right. You know, going to watch races, see his success, and I feel like from 2010 on, I probably saw the best years of my brother's racing. Yeah. And so it just life happened. I mean, it was not by choice, but it was just the way things were going. I had my degree. I was working. You know, I personally didn't want to drive halfway across the country, get rained out, and then have to support a family to say, I didn't make anything. What am I going to do now? So it was kind of just a personal choice. I mean, I still could have raced, and I probably could still be racing for Bobby to this day, to be honest. We were that close. It wasn't something that my heart was in, and if I couldn't give him 100%, then it wasn't fair to him. So
right, that's awesome. So you talk about a wife and you talk about boys. Yep. When did you meet Lacey, and how did you meet Lacey? Like, I want to get into the good stuff, racing, whatever. We'll talk about that some more here in a second. But let's talk about Lacey, because She's pretty stellar, dude. Like
she's 100%.
I don't know how you got that one.
Yeah, I know. I definitely got lucky. So actually, we didn't meet until my senior year of college.
Was she going to OSU
yeah,
too?
She was at
so
OSU
you went to
as
Oklahoma
well.
State.
Yep. So we met actually. I was a friend of one of her roommates, and so we became friends. We were kind of in the same classes, and that's kind of how we met. Was through her friend. And instantly we kind of.
So was it like a toga party one night, or
no?
Were you down at the Copper Penny, or like nothing like that?
Actually, she'll probably tell you the real story. She says I stood her up for church. Yeah, and which is probably a sin in itself. But she says I stood her up for church. I lived with some great guys in college. They were my friends from kindergarten. We went through school together. We were all roommates in college. Absolutely the best guys you could ask for to live and grow up with. I was racing at the time and it was one of those of, yes, I did say, hey, your friends will be there. I will be there. Let's just meet. We'll go to lunch after church. Well, the night I was driving back from a race, and I was like, I'm just going to go all the way to Stillwater, and I called her or texted her or whatever at the time and just said, hey, I'm not going to make it. And sure enough, my roommates, being who they were, great guys, are like, hey, I don't care how long you drove and how much sleep you've missed, you're getting up and going to church with us. And I was like, okay, fine. They weren't going to leave me alone. I wasn't going to sleep.
You're right.
They weren't going to leave me alone. So they're like, you're coming with us. Well, lo and behold, I go to church, and her friend goes, hey, and we've never met at this time, so remind you that. She goes, hey, that's Darren right there. And she goes, oh, so I thought you weren't coming. So luckily, I guess I sweet-talked her enough to still go to lunch with me. And so that's how we started. So she'll still tell the story to this day that our first date, I stood her up, which it was not that way. So luckily, she gave me a second chance, and I couldn't ask for a better, wife, mom, race supporter. She didn't really know anything about racing until we met, and so I kind of brought her into this mess.
Which, by the way, she's like really getting into it now.
Yeah, she
is bought into the race mom
than I do.
Oh, bro.
Sometimes
I kind of peek out my window every now and then to like see all the race moms.
Yeah,
she's one of the race moms now.
Yeah, she is a race mom.
That's cool.
So sometimes I have to tell her to just calm down a little bit. It's just part of
relax. Remember, that's your brother-in-law that you're yelling at.
You can't get on to Shane. No going up to the press box. But no, she's great, and 100% support. Not only does this take time for me and the boys to come have fun, Britton, our daughter, and Lacey, I mean, they're right there with us. They wouldn't miss it for a day and want to come and enjoy this as much as we do. And, they're having to come to the races and help support, and they don't even get to go out and have any of the fun like we do.
So whenever you quit for that time, the boys are growing up, and you're going to different races and watching Shane and everything else. The boys are probably excited. I've seen some pictures of them at like Knoxville and things like that, and they're sitting in different drivers' cars and stuff. And I'm like, man, I remember being that little kid, like getting in the car. Was there ever a time where you were like, yep, your dad used to run one of these old cars too back in 2001? 2001, that's forever ago.
Yeah.
Like, kind of break it down for them. Did they know Dad was a race car driver?
I don't really think they maybe I explained that. Oh yeah, I used to race. And they're like, but, until they saw it, they were living life through pictures.
Yeah.
So I don't think they understood. So I mean, a lot of times, most of their racing was seeing, Shane. And we'd go to the races, and like you said, they want to put the helmets on, sit in the cars, just be a kid. Every kid loves to see that. And, but yeah, so I mean, there'd be times come up, and they were like, oh, you should race again. I'm like, no, I don't need to race again. My day has come and gone. I'm past that time. And, and then so fast forward to where we are now, it's really cool. And I think they see a lot of joy, too, of just being able to see me race, have fun. Granted, it wasn't to the magnitude of what it is, but we're getting to do it as a family. So, and, just seeing their joy in their face of seeing me race, it's really neat and special.
So you said that they were on you for a while. Dad, I want to race. Dad, I want to race. Dad, I want to race. Twin boys.
Yeah.
Dad, I want to race. Dad, I want to race. And you're like, man, that's 2 helmets. That's 2 fire suits.
Yeah.
That's 2 race cars. Well, just wait a little bit. Just wait a little bit. Well, then all of a sudden, here comes your brother to the rescue and buys a racetrack.
Exactly. It's his fault.
An hour and a half away from the house, like right around the corner from Mom and Dad's shop. Like, what was that the deciding factor where you were like, okay, we'll get a junior sprint?
Yeah. Yeah. So it really honestly was. So I blame all this on Shane. It was. They, for the past, probably since the boys were 6 or 7, and really it was more Brody than Braxton. Brody was heavily, I want to race. And, he is fascinated, watch all things racing. And so we kind of got into where they were riding, they love dirt bikes. So we would always go down to Supercross, and they just loved it. Mm-hmm. They had their favorite drivers, or I guess they'd say riders, and they loved it and just loved everything racing. And then they kind of got into, as we were watching Shane and they got older, Brody was heavily, I want to race. I'm going to race. I want to race. And I'm just like, no, it's different. It's different. Things are more expensive, it's just different. And it's a huge commitment. And so this started probably about 6 or 7 years old. Braxton was kind of probably similar to my personality of, oh, okay, that's cool, but probably really never thought it was going to happen.
Yeah.
But Brody was adamant. And then, like you said, Shane and Jen come along, buy a racetrack. And the first words out of Brody's mouth were, well, we have a racetrack. If we're going to be there anyway, we might as well race. And, and I kind of back in my mind, telling Lacey and have a conversation with her and my parents of like, if we're going to be there,
might as well.
Let's give them a shot.
So you got the 1 junior sprint.
Yeah, so we got the 1 junior sprint, made some laps out here, and we were just like, hey, let's just buy one. Let's make some laps for about a month, and let's just practice and see how this goes. Well, because Braxton was still kind of on the fence. Braxton's like, I don't know if I really want to. Yeah, and I said, well, let's just make some laps, and let's just see how it goes. So we came out here, made some laps, and after about the second or third time, even just going out on the racetrack, the first time we were here, Braxton's like, yep, I'm doing it. And I was just like, okay, well, so here we go.
Like, I remember the first couple of laps, set of the laps that they made, and I was like, dude, they're actually pretty solid. Like, they're not too shabby, right? You've been able to watch them now for the last year and a half, whatever it is. I don't know the exact timing, but, year and a half is what we're going to call it.
Yep.
They have progressed so far, so quickly, that it's just wild to me. How's that coaching going from Dad and Grandpa?
Yeah, it's tough. And I don't know if it's tough because I have sat in a race car. So something that might come easy to some and others. But it's also been a balancing act. I have to explain stuff a little bit different to Brody than Braxton just because I feel like they drive a little different.
They really do. They have 2 totally different styles.
So Braxton is probably more, I'd say the way I probably raced growing up, where he's patient, he kind of takes his time.
He's laid back, he's chill.
Kind of laid back, which sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. Brody, on the other hand,
his elbows up.
Yeah, he is going to, he's coming one way or another.
Yeah.
And so I've tried to tone him down a little bit.
Right.
Which it's hard because you don't really want to take the aggression out of him.
Right.
But you just got to race smart. So we've been trying to learn to race smart over the last year. And I feel like they really have, and I think a lot of it's age. Mm-hmm. I go back to when I started. I was 7 years old. My dad said it was like a broken record every week. I was telling you the same thing over and over and over again. And he said, and that's just because you were 7. Mm-hmm. You rather go play in the dirt than understand what I'm trying to explain to you. With the boys, they were 9 when we kind of first got started. So I think just that little bit of maturity and age, it helps because there's a little bit to do with I can explain something and they might not fully understand it, but they understand it more than a 7-year-old does.
Right.
Now there is 7-year-olds that will get it and they're going to be fast. They're right off the bat, and that's just naturally God-given talent. But yeah, I do think that a little bit of the last year of growth has been predominantly hopefully that they can do it. And two, just, the little bit of, the age difference of being a little bit older and maybe understanding what I'm trying to explain to them and stuff like that. So, so.
If you stop and think about it, for me, I'm getting real excited because they're so close to, getting the job done on a consistent basis. For you, what's that like, knowing that so quickly they're adapting and they're learning as a dad, as a race car driver, as a fan, as everything? That's got to be pretty cool for you too.
Yeah, no, it's I honestly think my dad gets as much enjoyment out of this as I think that he sees a lot of, for him to come full circle from doing this with me and the boys and now being able to do it with grandkids, it's cool to see, his excitement to seeing, something that he has a hand in, be successful. So it's really neat as parents to see your kids succeed, whether that's in baseball,
soccer, whatever,
any sport. This is just a lot of people's sport.
Yeah.
For all the families that are out here, this is most family sport.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't play a whole lot of, basketball, baseball, soccer because I was always at the racetrack. And I feel like the boys are kind of getting into that a little bit now, and as most of the families out here do. So, yeah, it's really cool to see. But I also have to remind myself sometimes to just be a dad.
Yeah.
It's really being a racer, seeing them do it once, they can do it.
Again.
And then the racer comes out in you of, like, why are you just not doing this?
Right.
And so sometimes, whether we run 8th one night, I try to check myself a lot to take off the you should be doing better hat and just say, man, you did awesome. Yeah, you ran 8th, but you know what? Here's let me show you in this video, these laps like that. And that's hopefully trying to build their confidence, like you said, to be able to – because at this age, a lot of times, all those kids can do it.
Right.
That class, it has, I would say, my kid's no different than any of the other kids that I've seen come over the last year. Every single one of them stepped up their game.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of that is just laps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's laps and racing with each other. And it's really cool to see how that class has grown.
Yeah.
To have 20 to 25 cars maybe on a given night, that in itself, speaks volumes.
Yeah.
That there's people that want to take the time and effort, and those kids, there's 10 of them out there that can win on a given night.
Right.
And so it's really cool to see.
So you get 2 junior sprints, you start racing, then all of a sudden there's another 600 car in the trailer.
Yeah.
How did that all come about, right? How did the connection with Kevin Reed and Kathy really come about, and now you're in the DragonFly Aviation number 36S?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I knew who Kevin was as I was kind of running micros and moving into sprint cars. He was kind of hanging around. I think he told the story about BJ Fay and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
BJ and I raced in 125s as well. And so, I don't, probably being a kid, didn't remember him personally, but knew who he was. Knew who he was from, just seeing the DragonFly cars out here and being involved in racing.
Right.
And then it was the first weekend, I believe, the boys raced, and it was a 2-day show. And we were up here. I think Brody, tried to win it on the first lap, hit the wall, turned over. And my first introduction was Kevin Reed. He walked over to me. I didn't know who he was. My dad did, because my dad had dealt with him in parts for his stuff. But he walked up to me and he goes, hey, I have a junior sprint over there. Anything you need off of it, you can have. And that was my first introduction to Kevin. And, at the time I was like, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you. But, we'll regroup and do this tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because all my mind is, oh, my gosh, my kid's going to go crash his car too. So, so that was my first introduction. Well, as the weekend went on, we were kind of parked next to each other. And, of course, just being with my brother and stuff, he probably knew more about me. And he walked away that weekend and said, you're going to drive one of my cars. And I was like, nope. That ship has sailed. I am not racing. I have no business racing. He goes, no, just race one. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'll leave it at that. I don't know. Well, about 3 or 4 days go by, and that went on. about 3 or 4 days go by. I get this random text message from this phone number I don't know, and he goes, "Hey, the Donnie Ray's in 3 weeks or 2 weeks." He goes, "You want to race my car?" And I was just like, you know what? Why not? I'm gonna be there anyways. Why not? Let's go have some fun.
I'm gonna be there anyways.
Yeah.
Why not?
And I was like, don't expect anything, but yeah, let's go have some fun. And that's Kevin's number one thing. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
And so I was like, sure, why not? Let's do it. And here we are. I mean,
and so let's talk about that Donnie Ray Crawford race. It's coming up. We have
absolutely.
it next week, the 11th annual, the 10th annual Donnie Ray Crawford Memorial Sportsman A feature. Man.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that last lap. Just a quick breakdown. Like you were like third?
Yeah. I think we were around third or fourth, battling there with I think it was Griggs, Justin Simpson, and I don't remember the fourth car, but yeah, there was a 4-car kind of battle. Throw a blanket over everyone.
Yeah.
And I was going to be excited to run fourth.
Yeah.
To be honest. So it was. I'm kind of still numb that it happened.
Right.
Did not expect that one bit. And Chad and Chris and Kevin and all of we all kind of still joke around. I'm like, man, that race kind of shocked me. And, they'll all without a beat say, yeah, us too. They're like, we did not expect that one bit. And it just, right place, right time.
Right.
I always believe that if you can at least just put yourself in position to have an opportunity, sometimes opportunities provide themselves. So
right.
I still remember. Luckily, I think I just decided, hey, here's the chance I'm going to make a move. I think luckily Justin, got tight and kind of pushed, and he just left the middle open enough for me to stick my nose in there. And then I was able to just kind of, sometimes it's better to be running second.
Right.
Than first, because first you're, especially at the end of the race, you're sitting there thinking like, hey, I might have this. I need to kind of protect myself.
Right.
Second place has nothing to lose.
Exactly.
They're going to try something that, and I just was able to move up to the top of the racetrack at the right time and get some momentum built up, and the rest is there. So.
How cool was that winning the Donnie Ray Crawford Memorial?
If there was any race I would say I wanted to win in a micro, that was it. And to do it the way it happened, I don't want to say it was like meant to be, but it's really neat. The Crawford family has meant so much. I mean, I still remember, being my daughter's age and being around the Hillenbergs and the Crawfords. They were like second family.
Right.
Like you said, this is a family, and we saw them every weekend. Mm-hmm. But the Crawford family, what they mean to racing, and for Donnie Ray, it would have been really cool to see, his life play out.
Right.
He was going to be something special. The impact of, like you said, 11 years later for what he still does.
It's
you
pretty
can tell.
crazy.
Not saying that, gone definitely way too soon, but he meant a lot to a lot of people.
What's crazy to me is that he's still molding people's lives.
100%.
And the way that they have built the legacy and continue to just the impact, it leaves me speechless.
Yep.
Year after year, you try and find the words and you try and figure it out. But there's kids racing now that have no clue
Yep.
how good he was.
Yep.
And you show them some videos and they're like, whoa,
Yep.
that dude was good. And
Yep.
I'm like, I'm with you. I wish we could have seen it play out and how far he would have gone, because it would have been really, really special. We've been talking for quite a while here. I want to let you go so you can get ready and so we can get this episode edited. Being a former race car driver full-time, running up and down the road, doing the college thing, to taking the break to do the family thing, to now, as a family, doing the racing thing again, it feels like everything's come full circle for you.
Yep.
Right? Is there a piece of advice or like some words of wisdom that you could give to a young driver,
Yep.
to a young dad that's just getting started in it, a family that's not from racing, that's coming into this full force?
Yeah. I think as a parent, just be ready for the ups and downs. You're going to have great weekends, and for that matter, as a driver too. You're going to have great weekends. You're going to have bad weekends. But it's the willpower to strap back in and do it again next week. It takes a lot of work and a lot of time and effort, but the reward to see your kids smile when they run 5th, I mean, it makes all the time and effort and week. As a driver and a young driver wanting to take the next step, and I'm sure Shane and any professional driver could do, is it's work hard. There is a lot of talented racers. So I think there was a YouTube video, Kenny Wallace, and it still rings in my head of, what do I got to do to get that sponsor, to get this, to get that. I personally, naturally, do not have an outgoing personality. I'm kind of more sheltered, reserved, and it kind of makes me uncomfortable to speak to someone. So thinking back now, do I wish I would have pushed myself to be outgoing and spoken and speak to people? Yeah, I do, because that could have been my game changer. Unfortunately, that wasn't my personality, so that's just not the way I am. So be humble, but work hard. I know there's some racers, and the first one that comes to mind as being a young kid that puts a lot of time and effort and is known as a hard worker is Garrett Benton. There's a lot of talented kids out there that are going to have talent and they're going to have money behind them. But I still remember, and it rings true to me, I still remember how I got my start with the Spark still was working hard. At Knoxville, that was whenever I landed my chance to race for him, and he walked up to me and more or less said, it was me and actually Philip Dietz. Philip ran up and down the road with me. Jason Johnson went on to PA and ran up, and he came and started working for me. And so we went on the road pretty much. Bobby couldn't go sometimes, so me and Philip loaded up in the dually, went on down the road, and we were successful. We won a lot of races together on the ASCS deal with just me and Philip, which is kind of crazy being a 19 or 20-year-old and just the two of us. So Philip, he's a hard worker, and look how he is now. I mean, he's put himself in a great position to work himself into a spot. And I still remember, like I said, that Sparks came up to me and was saying, of all this thing, you guys are locked into the 360 Nationals, and we were able to lock ourselves in by points. And he said, and I walk out to work on my car, and you and Philip are out there working already. Yeah. And he said, that was the reason when I walked away knowing that you were going to drive my car. He said, because it showed you wanted to do it. It showed you wanted to work hard. And so I try to tell my kids that too, of like, this car's not going to fix itself. Yeah. Like, you're going to come out and you're going to do it, and you're going to work hard and show some effort here, or we're not going to do this. So
and that's going to make everything that much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, whenever you do pick off those wins and you get those championships and everything else, it just makes it all so much better.
So like I said, to sum it up, be humble, work hard. There's a lot of talented kids out there. So you have to find that niche that sets yourself apart. And that's what I'd tell my kids if they were asking me. So
and be ready for the ups and downs. It's been Darren Stewart right here on Haas Talks.
The Performance Electronics wideband O2 sensor with Bluetooth. With just 3 wires, installation couldn't be easier. Quickly connect your smartphone to our simple app to monitor your engine's air-fuel ratio in real time without gauges. The PE wideband O2 sensor is just one of many Performance Electronics products that can add brains and brawn to your next high-performance project. Find them all at pe-ltd.com.